At 3 p.m. on June 22, 2024, China successfully launched the Space Variable Objects Monitor into space using the Chinese Long March 2C rocket from the Xichang launch base. Minutes later, debris from the rocket's first stage booster fell near a village in Guizhou County in southeastern Guizhou Province. A huge cloud of orange and yellow smoke followed after this. Since the local government did not notify the surrounding areas in time before the launch, many villagers were startled by the sudden event and fled in panic. The orange-yellow smoke is nitrogen dioxide produced from the combustion of the rocket propellants nitrogen tetroxide and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine. Nitrogen dioxide is a highly toxic gas that can contribute to acid rain, corrode buildings, damage vegetation and soil, and acidify waters. The rocket debris landed in the heavily forested, rain-soaked mountainous area where Guizhou, Guangxi, and Hunan provinces meet. This region is a vital water source for the Yangtze and Pearl rivers. The toxic chemicals from the rocket fuel can quickly spread with rainfall and accumulate in the environment through biological processes. This contamination threatens the ecological health of the entire Yangtze and Pearl River systems and poses significant health risks to hundreds of millions of residents. Why does China use such highly toxic fuel for its rockets? China's use of highly toxic fuel is rooted in early Soviet technological pathways. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union extensively used nitrogen tetroxide and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine as low-temperature, self-igniting propellants in developing intercontinental ballistic missiles. These fuels can combust without ignition devices, simplifying engine design and enhancing reliability. They remain liquid at room temperature, eliminating the need for complex cryogenic storage facilities and reducing logistical support requirements. During the Cold War, these features were crucial for the rapid deployment of missiles. China's early space programs heavily inherited Soviet technology, including the choice of rocket fuel. Even today, Long March rockets 2, 3, and 4 still use nitrogen tetroxide and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine propellants. Globally, other countries are much more cautious about using toxic fuels. NASA uses these propellants only in certain deep space probes and lunar lander engines for their ignition and operational benefits, enhancing mission success rates. SpaceX uses self-igniting propellants only in small steering thrusters on crewed Dragon spacecraft, while the main engines use non-toxic combinations like liquid oxygen and rocket-grade kerosene, or liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. Europe's Ariane series of launch vehicles, Japan's H-2A rockets, and India's launch vehicle Mark III rockets have all abandoned toxic fuels in favor of environmentally friendly propellants. Even Russia has replaced the traditional nitrogen tetroxide and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine combination with liquid oxygen and kerosene in its new Angara rockets. Since 2015, China has been attempting to use non-toxic fuel in space launches, claiming to phase out toxic fuels. However, in the past 9 years, there have been 301 rocket launches using toxic fuel and only 30 using non-toxic fuel. In 2023 alone, China conducted 67 space launches, 47 of which involve Long March rockets, with 44 using toxic fuel. Why is the Chinese government so slow to eliminate toxic fuel? The main reason is cost. Non-toxic fuel is 70% to 80% more expensive than toxic fuel. For example, in 2023, the 44 launches using toxic fuel cost about $2.2 billion. If all these launches had used non-toxic fuel, the cost would have risen to around $4 billion, requiring an additional $1.8 billion. Over 9 years, using non-toxic fuel exclusively would have cost China an extra $12.3 billion. From the government's perspective, it's more economical to continue using toxic fuel, sacrificing public health and environmental safety to save money. But can't the Chinese government afford this $12.3 billion? It can. In 2023, China heavily invested in its naval shipbuilding program. The cost for just 8 Type 055 destroyers was around $10 billion, and a single Type 003 aircraft carrier also cost about $10 billion. Including the expenses for the first two carriers, the total cost for major surface shipbuilding in recent years has been around $30 billion. This shows that the government is not short on funds, but prefers to spend on military equipment. Investing in environmental protection and improving public welfare offers no visible or immediate benefits. It also does not help in achieving the government's goals of competing with the U.S. or asserting military dominance over Taiwan. They would rather allocate funds to build ships, planes, and missiles to gain an advantage over the West. If the Chinese government had a change of heart and redirected part of the vast military budget to upgrade rocket fuel, the international community might view China more favorably. However, the reality is that the government prioritizes military expansion over improving launch conditions and ensuring public safety. This stubborn attitude has led to China's current poor international standing and domestic struggles. The Chinese government's approach to rocket fuel choices reveals a blatant disregard for people's safety and the natural environment. It's like a reckless person constantly looking to bully others while leaving their own home and surroundings in disarray. Such behavior is either insanely reckless or extremely foolish and is bound to face widespread condemnation and repercussions. Countries like the U.S., Russia, and India have also used toxic fuels in the past, but their launch sites and flight paths are designed to avoid densely populated areas. In contrast, due to various historical reasons, China often launches rockets from inland, with debris landing dangerously close to homes and farmland, causing frequent public outcry. The Indian Space Research Organization even issued a mocking critique of China's disregard for public safety. Numerous videos online show orange debris scattered across hillsides, fields, and ruins in rural China after rocket launches, with toxic gases lingering in the air. This shocking sight has led to widespread global condemnation of China's irresponsibility. The geographic locations of China's major rocket launch sites are far from international standards. Ideally, a launch site should be near the equator and face a vast ocean. Closer proximity to the equator allows rockets to benefit from the Earth's rotational speed, saving fuel and improving efficiency. Additionally, ocean-facing launch sites minimize the risk of debris causing harm in case of an accident. This explains why most well-known space launch sites are located in low-latitude coastal areas. NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, USA, near the Atlantic Ocean at 28 degrees north, the Guiana Space Center in French Guiana near the Atlantic Ocean at 5 degrees north, the Satish Dhawan Space Center in India near the Bay of Bengal at 13 degrees north, the Tanegashima Space Center in Japan near the Pacific Ocean at 30 degrees north. In contrast, all four of China's major space launch sites are deep inland. The Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in the Gobi Desert of Gansu, near Mongolia to the west and the Loess Plateau to the east. The Xichang Satellite Launch Center in the Sichuan Basin borders the Tibetan Plateau to the north and the Yunnan Guizhou Plateau to the southeast. The Taiyuan Satellite Launch Center in the Taihang Mountains of central Shaanxi Province. The Wenchang spacecraft launch site is coastal, but frequently affected by typhoons. Why are China's launch site locations so different from the global norm? This divergence is due to a mix of historical and practical factors. China does have potential locations for launch sites, such as western Xinjiang, which borders the vast Gobi and Taklamakan Desert and is highly suitable for a launch site. However, during the Cold War, China avoided this area due to concerns about a Soviet attack. Given their advantageous conditions near the ocean, China could have also opted for coastal areas for its launch sites. However, China was more concerned about potential airstrikes or reconnaissance missions from the United States at the time. Due to these considerations, China established its main launch centers inland. The Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, built in 1958, is China's oldest launch site and is located near the southwestern border of Mongolia. The Taiyuan Satellite Launch Center, completed in 1966, primarily handles polar and medium to high orbit satellite launches. Rocket debris from Jiuquan often falls in uninhabited areas, while debris from Taiyuan occasionally lands in villages near the Shaanxi Inner Mongolia border, causing limited harm. However, debris from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center often falls in the mountainous regions of Hunan, Guangxi, and Guizhou, leading to more public grievances. The Xichang Satellite Launch Center, completed in 1984, was chosen for its 28-degree latitude, which is more effective for launching geostationary orbit satellites compared to northern sites. Its unique geography, surrounded by mountains and winding valleys, also makes it difficult for missiles and aircraft to reach, reducing the risk of attacks from the U.S. or the Soviet Union. China's fourth launch center, the Xichang spacecraft launch site in Hainan, was operational in 2014. Its low latitude is ideal for launching heavy rockets and geostationary satellites, with most rocket debris falling into the sea. Xichang is currently expanding to add a second launch pad, expected to be completed within the year, enabling up to 16 launches annually. Over the past 6 to 7 years, the frequency of China's space launches has rapidly increased, putting more pressure on residents in booster drop zones to take evasive action. Before 2018, residents only had to evacuate 2 to 3 times a year. By 2018, this number had risen to 8 times. In 2023, with 67 launches, residents in the 3 main drop zones had to evacuate 20 times a year, averaging an evacuation every 2 to 3 weeks. If China aims to match the U.S. in launch frequency with 180 launches per year, residents in these areas would need to evacuate 60 times annually, or at least once a week. Such frequent evacuations would be intolerable for even the most patient citizens, increasing public pressure to move launches to the Xichang site. However, Xichang's capacity is still limited, and in the long run, moving to large-scale sea launches is the best solution. The Chinese government has already established a sea-based platform in the Yellow Sea, launching Long March 11 rockets in 2019, and another in the South China Sea, launching Long March 8 rockets in 2022. However, the Chinese government is still reluctant to abandon inland launch sites. The Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center handles manned space missions, with its flat terrain facilitating rescue operations. The Xichang Satellite Launch Center primarily launches geostationary satellites, and Taiyuan focuses on sun-synchronous and near-polar orbit satellites. Shutting down these sites and moving all operations offshore is unrealistic from both national security and economic perspectives. Moreover, the older Long March 2, 3, and 4 rockets, despite their environmental drawbacks, are highly mature technologies with low launch costs, offering unique advantages for launching small and medium satellites. Therefore, it will take time to phase these rockets out completely. On one hand, China's space launch missions are expected to increase in the coming years. On the other hand, the Long March 2, 3, and 4 rockets will continue to be used. Consequently, the 3 inland launch centers will remain operational. In the foreseeable future, villagers in the mountainous regions of Hunan, Guangxi, and Guizhou are likely to face more incidents like the June 22nd toxic rocket falling from the sky. SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket has already achieved precise recovery and reuse of its first stage boosters. After launch, the booster can autonomously return to a designated location, using controlled lateral thrust and vertical landing to safely touch down on land or sea platforms. So when will Chinese rockets achieve controlled recovery like SpaceX, sparing Chinese citizens from the frequent need to avoid falling rocket debris? Objectively, China has made some progress in rocket recovery technology. The Long March 8 rocket uses lateral engines and grid fins, initially providing controlled return capabilities for its first stage booster. However, due to overall design and engine performance limitations, its recovery precision and success rate are still far behind SpaceX. Furthermore, for China to achieve precise recovery and reuse of rocket stages, much work remains in technology choices, engine performance improvements, and material and process advancements. In this regard, China is at least 5 to 10 years behind SpaceX. Therefore, completely phasing out the Long March 2, 3, and 4 rockets, which use toxic fuels, is the correct path to avoid villagers having to dodge falling rockets. However, the Chinese government seems hesitant to fully commit to abandoning toxic rockets. They argue that the Long March 2, 3, and 4 series are technically challenging to recover precisely, and the toxic residues make the recovery process risky. Clearly, in the face of renovation costs and technological maturity, the health and environmental protection of the populace often becomes sacrificed. This exemplifies the Chinese Communist Party's prioritization of its interests above all else. Under this mindset, the Chinese government is fully engaged in a space race with the United States, disregarding the irreversible ecological damage caused by toxic fuels and the life-threatening risks rocket debris poses to innocent civilians. As long as it means surpassing their competitors in space, no price seems too high. For ordinary people, this situation is both cruel and ironic. They must repeatedly evacuate their homes to avoid rocket debris, watching their fields covered in toxic fog, all to fulfill the Chinese Communist Party's space dream. But what real significance does this dream hold for their lives, their food, shelter, and safety?